So now we will create a JWT authentication strategy. So I'm going to create one new file here, JWT strategy.ts. In this, I'll create a class with the same name, JWT strategy. I'll have to add class keyword, and then as we did it in local strategy, I will have to extend this class with passport strategy function. In this I will have to pass the strategy. This time I will be using passport JWT, unlike last time we used passport local. Since this time we are writing the strategy for passport, I mean passport JWT, that's why we are using this one. Okay, and then uh, previously in local strategy we use super to configure username field. So generally this will depend on what strategy we are using. So if you are not sure like what parameter or options we pass here, you will have to visit the official website of passport, and there you will find corresponding strategy and their configuration. Since I'm already aware of the properties I need to configure, I will let you know here what we need to configure. And the first properties that I need to write here is JWT from request, and probably will also not get auto completion here. So you will have to make sure that you are writing correct word. So JWT from request, and we will be using one library here, extract JWT from passport JWT, and from here we need to configure it with from auth header as access token. So this is a utility, uh, you can say utility module of passport JWT, which will actually extract header auth header from bearer as a bearer token from um, request. And now the second thing is we need to again configure secret. So here the name of property is secret or key, k will be in caps. And why this is important is it will be used to extract payload from access token. Since we have signed the access token with this key, it it should be the same access token, and I will be using config config service to get the access token. So I'll have to inject it here, private read only config service, and then config service. Let's import this, and now we can use this config service. So whenever you are using config service, make sure you have already imported it in your module. Okay, get string, and then we are passing property name auth dot JWT secret. Okay, this is same as we did it in here in use factory, so you can copy and paste if you want. Alright, there's one more thing I need to configure here is ignore expiration, which you can just keep it as false since we want it to expire after the configure time. So if you see here, we have configured expires in, and this value would be, I guess, 2 hours, right? 1 hour. Okay, so that's fine. After 1 hour this token will be expired. So let's go back here. Now in any passport strategy, the constructor properties, the parent class properties may varies, but there will be one validate method, async validate. And now in local strategy, we get the username and password from extracted from body, but here in this case we'll get payload. I'm writing it as any, but definitely we can create a type of when we tried to create access token. We created, I mean, we had two properties. So let's create a new type here. So I will mark it injectable, and above this I'm going to create a type export type JWT payload, and this would be sub, and it would be string. I'm not sure whether it is string, let me check. So if the subject is ID, I probably have added ID as a number, right? So this ID, okay, this ID is number, so here we need to use subject as number and then email as string. Make sure this matches with the payload we use to create access token. Okay, now we can assign this one here. All right. Okay, so what is going to happen here? So we are going to extract the user from it. So we will again use id as payload dot sub, and email is should be payload dot email. We can do anything else, we can attach further properties, but this is fine. And now this object will be attached to request, so it will attach to it like request dot user. Okay, fine. All right, since we have created this as a provider, I am going to add it in module providers list. Let's add this endpoint. I mean, let's use this strategy on some other endpoint. So for that, what I'm gonna do, I'm going to go in here in users controller, and let's say we want to protect this complete users controller. So I will use guard, and then I'll pass auth guard, and then in auth guard we need to write JWT. Okay, so before it goes here, it will first verify this and it will attach the user here, and once this is verified, and this will be, what we can say, all this thing will be triggered. Although we'll not be using request.user here as of now, since this users list is generic, like it's not related to the user. Let's say the request on request, let's say the user which is attached is my ID, but these are just a generic method of users, so probably using that ID won't be useful here. But we will create another endpoint here for the profiles that will use the same ID which we are extracting. So in access token, this ID is my user ID, and we can use this user ID to fetch my user profile, right? Okay, let's try to just verify whether our auth guard is working for this user controller or not. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try to hit this user endpoint again, and this is working. Okay, fine. How to know like whether this auth guard worked or not? So let me drag it a bit. Here, if I remove this access token and see, Now it will say unauthorized. So if we are not authorized, and then this will not work. Although later on we can think of, like, if the user is admin of role admin, then these endpoints should work. Apart from that, others will not be able to access this, since these are the generic users method for the system. It's not related to the profile the user logged in. Okay, now let's create the endpoint for the profile. So what I'm gonna do here, I will go in auth controller, and here I'll just write get profile, and I need to use that guard, so I will use guards, and here auth guard as JWT. I'll have to get user from the request, so I have annotated it with the request, and I'll I'll let I mean use it as a any type, and then I can just use auth service and create a new method get user profile, or we can name it get current user profile, and we can pass request dot, we can check if user exists, and then we can pass ID. Alright, and now then we can return it. Since this doesn't exist on auth service, it is throwing error. What we can do, we can create a method here, so we can use the user service to get the user by ID. So we are going to use user service, and what was the method, find user by ID, and we can pass this ID, and then we can return it. Since we are already 100% sure, since if it reaches this line means the user will definitely have the user profile details, means this would be some valid user, then it must be having some details. So I'm not adding any extra checks right now. Instead, let's try to just return this and see what are the details it is returning. So I'll add one request here in Postman. I'll name it get profile, and this should be API v1 auth profile. So we are following this same pattern, right? Okay, and now if I try to execute this, I'm unauthorized, so let's use bearer token and just try to use access token environment variable and save your request, so that next time when you will close the Postman and open it, you can use this again. Click on send. Now we are getting the profile. This is the user which I am logged in. So if you notice, member6 at rate of gmail.com, and this is the same one which I used to log in. So this user, so I'm getting my profile, but it is not a good practice to return password. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to use promise response user detail, and I will use what we can say plain to instance method of class transformer that will help us exclude this password as we did it in users as well, right? So what we can do here, we can use plain to instance, and now the first one is the class in which we want to transform the response user DTO, and the second is the data. Okay, let's see what it gives us. Now this time password is gone from here, so now we are getting a perfect data here. In next video we'll see how we can create custom auth guard. Instead of writing all this, I mean here if you notice we are writing this much every time, so we can create some auth guard and we can directly use private route or public route, something like that. We can just write public route or private route and at rate private, then it will be private automatically. So we'll create something like that.